My name is Claire Morgan. I'm 28 years old and I live in Miami, Florida. By day, I manage events for a luxury hotel chain, and by night, I bury myself in journals and late-night lists of goals. My flaw? I've always been too trusting, too eager to please the very people who never gave me the same in return. For most of my life, my family saw me as the background character in their story. The quiet girl who worked too hard for too little, who dreamed too big without the means to match. I thought if I just kept proving myself one day, they'd see me. But they didn't. They broke me instead. One December evening, my sister smiled across the living room, her voice sharp enough to cut. "You're not invited this year, Claire. Christmas dinner is family only, family only." As if I were nothing. They laughed at my stunned silence. They thought they'd won. But they had no idea that years later, the invitations wouldn't be coming from they'd be coming from me, from my private island. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Have you ever been excluded by your own family? Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because I promise this story isn't just about exclusion. It's about what comes after. I should probably start from the beginning, so you understand why that moment, being banned from my own family's Christmas dinner, cut so deep. Because Christmas wasn't just a holiday in my family, it was a tradition, a stage, a ritual where every role was carefully cast. And mine was always the same, the overlooked daughter, the one who brought extra side dishes, set the table, and disappeared into the kitchen while my sister, Heather, soaked up the spotlight. And for years, I accepted that role, until the year I didn't. Growing up in the suburbs of North Carolina, Christmas was the one time of year our family house buzzed with warmth. My dad strung lights across every window, my mom baked pies, and Heather played piano while everyone praised her talents. I was the one who fetched eggnog, passed the cookies, and smiled in the background of family photos. And every December, as snow fell and carols played, I told myself, maybe next year they'll notice me. They never did. The cracks started showing after college. I worked 2 jobs to pay off my loans, one at a coffee shop, another as a receptionist, while Heather landed a corporate position through Dad's connections. At Christmas dinners, she bragged about promotions and bonuses while my parents beamed with pride. And when it was my turn to share, my mom would tilt her head and ask, "Still struggling, Claire? You should be more like your sister, every year." The words cut deeper. The Christmas before I was banned. I remember carrying in trays of food I'd cooked myself. Mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, pecan pie. Heather waltzed in behind me with a single store-bought cheesecake. Guess whose dish everyone raved about? Not mine. That night, I overheard my dad whisper, "Claire's nice, but Heather's the one we're proud of." I never forgot it. So when the next December rolled around, I assumed, stupidly, that maybe this year would be different. I arrived at my parents' house a week before the holiday, arms full of gifts I couldn't afford, hopeful for once that I might finally be included. That's when Heather smirked across the living room, wine glass in hand, and delivered the blow. "You're not invited this year, Claire. Christmas dinner is family only." My mom didn't protest. My dad looked away, and in that moment, it felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I left the house that night with tears freezing on my cheeks, my heart shattered, and one vow burning inside me. I wouldn't beg them to let me in anymore. I'd build a life so undeniable, so powerful, that one day when the invitations came, they'd be begging me, and they'd never see the twist coming. Looking back, I should have seen it sooner, the way my family drew invisible lines. The way love in our house was conditional, but when you're a child, you don't call it favoritism. You just call it normal. I grew up in a 2-story brick house in Charlotte, North Carolina. From the outside, we looked like the perfect suburban family. Dad was a respected accountant, Mom chaired church fundraisers, and Heather, my older sister, was the golden child everyone admired. And then there was me, the quiet one, the helper, the one who filled in the gaps that no one else cared about. When Heather got straight A's, They framed her report cards. When I made the honor roll, Mom said, "Good, now keep it up." When Heather won a piano recital, Dad took the whole family out to dinner. When did I win a school essay contest? They barely remembered. It was always her world. I was just living in it. Christmas was where the favoritism sparkled brightest. Every year, Dad would pull the old tree from the attic, and Heather got to hang the star on top. She'd hum carols as Mom praised her graceful hands. My job? Unpacking the ornaments, untangling cords, sweeping pine needles from the floor. On Christmas Eve, Heather played piano while guests gathered around. I served cookies and refilled drinks, and on Christmas morning, while Heather's pile of gifts towered like a mountain, mine looked more like a polite afterthought. Still, I smiled. Still, I told myself it was fine, because that's what overlooked daughters do. After college, the gap widened. Heather became the family's pride. Sleek office job, new car, boyfriend with a good last name. I scraped by on hospitality gigs, dreaming of bigger things but never quite reaching them. At family dinners, Heather bragged about her projects while I was asked to say grace or pass the bread. I once tried to talk about an event I'd coordinated at a downtown hotel. Mom interrupted. "That's nice, dear. But Heather's promotion? Now that's something." I laughed it off, pretending it didn't sting, but each dismissal was another brick on my chest. Heather thrived on my invisibility. She'd whisper digs just loud enough for me to hear. "Claire, are you still chasing silly little dreams?" Or, "Don't you get tired of working for tips?" She delivered those lines with a smile sweet enough to fool everyone else. But I knew. She wanted me small. One Thanksgiving, weeks before the infamous Christmas betrayal, we sat around the table. Turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie. Heather raised her glass. "To family," she said. "To success, and to be grateful for what we have." Everyone clinked glasses. Then she turned to me, smirking. "And to Claire, our little waitress. Always serving, even here." The table erupted in laughter. Even Dad chuckled. I forced a smile, but inside, I shattered. That was the first time I wondered if maybe they didn't see me as family at all. So when December rolled around, I should have known something was coming. The way Mom dodged my calls. The way Heather avoided answering when I asked about plans. The way Dad kept changing the subject whenever I mentioned Christmas dinner. I told myself I was overthinking. That surely, after all these years of loyalty, they wouldn't leave me out. But deep down, a whisper gnawed at me. What if this year, they finally said out loud what they'd always shown me? And when the words came, "You're not invited," it wasn't just about Christmas dinner. It was about my place in their world, or rather, the place they'd never let me have. The months leading up to that Christmas were full of little storms, quiet cruelties disguised as jokes, betrayals hidden in plain sight. Looking back now, they weren't just warning signs. They were rehearsals for the big betrayal. That fall, something finally went right for me. At the hotel where I worked, my manager pulled me aside. "Claire," he said, "we're making you assistant event coordinator. It's not huge money yet, but it's a step, and I know you'll go far." I went home glowing, eager to share. At dinner that weekend, I told my family, "I got promoted." "I'll be planning conferences, weddings." Heather cut in, smirking. "So you'll be carrying bigger trays now? With flowers instead of fries?" Mom laughed. Dad shook his head as though I were a child bragging about learning my ABCs. "Sweetheart," Mom said, "that's nice. But Heather just got put on a project with the regional VP. That's real responsibility." The table clinked glasses for Heather. My news was swallowed whole. In October, my birthday rolled around. I worked a double shift so I could take the next evening off, hoping for even the smallest celebration. When I arrived at my parents' house, there was cake on the table, chocolate my favorite. My heart lifted, but when I leaned closer, I saw the words, "Congratulations, Heather." She had passed an exam for a certification. They'd forgotten it was my birthday when I whispered, "This was supposed to be mine." Heather smirked. "Well, maybe achieve something bigger next year." Everyone laughed. By Thanksgiving, the cruelty wasn't even subtle anymore. As we sat around the table, Heather raised her wine glass. To family, success, and to Claire, always serving. Even here. Everyone chuckled as I passed the gravy. Cheeks burning, I forced a smile, whispering to myself, one day, this won't be my role. It was late November when I noticed money missing from my dresser drawer. I'd been saving, small bills tucked away, to finally buy myself a decent car. When I confronted Mom, her response was chillingly casual. Oh, that? I borrowed it. Heather needed something nice for her office party. Don't worry, you'll make more, my voice trembled. That was weeks of tips, she smirked. Relax. Heather's future is worth investing in. That was the night I realized they didn't just ignore me. They stole from me. A week later, I went to drop something off at the house and found the living room full of neighbors, twinkling lights and trays of food. Heather's holiday cocktail night. I stood at the doorway, stunned. Mom frowned when she saw me. Claire, this is a private event. You wouldn't understand. You don't move in these circles. Heather smirked, whispering to a friend loud enough for me to hear. She's just the help. The room laughed. That word, help, echoed in my ears as I walked out into the cold night. I should have left them behind then. But I didn't, because some part of me still hoped that when Christmas came, they'd see me as more than the help. That, for once, they'd save me a seat at the table. But deep down, something twisted inside me already knew the truth. And when Heather finally delivered the words, "You're not invited this year, Claire. Christmas dinner is family only," it didn't just sting, it confirmed what I had feared all along. I had never really belonged at that table in the first place. The words hit harder than I expected. You're not invited this year, Claire. Christmas dinner is family only. Family only. Heather said it with a smirk, her wine glass balanced in her perfectly manicured hand. Mom didn't argue. Dad didn't defend me. The silence around them said enough. I'd gone to the house a week before Christmas, arms full of wrapped gifts. I'd saved for months, cheap trinkets, but chosen carefully for each of them. The tree sparkled in the corner. Heather's face glowed in the lights, and then she dropped the words that shattered me. I laughed at first, thinking it was a cruel joke. You're serious? I asked, voice trembling. Mom sighed. Claire, don't make this harder than it is. Heather invited colleagues this year. It's a different kind of event. Heather smirked. You wouldn't fit in. My arms shook. The gifts I carried slipped to the floor. I whispered, but I'm family. I've always been here. Heather tilted her head. And now you won't be. Traditions change. I looked at Dad, begging silently for him to intervene. His eyes darted away. The silence was louder than her words. Something inside me cracked. I picked up the gifts one by one, shoving them back into the bag. My hands trembled so hard I could barely grip the handles. I see, I whispered, though my voice didn't sound like mine anymore. As I walked to the door, Heather called after me. Don't take it personally, Claire. You're just not part of this chapter. Laughter followed me out into the night. I stumbled into the cold air, my tears freezing on my cheeks, my breath shaking, the world blurred. My own family had erased me. I sat in my car in their driveway, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For the first time in years, I felt utterly hollow, not just excluded, erased. That night, I called my best friend, Dana. They banned me, I whispered, my voice cracking. They said Christmas dinner is family only. As if I'm not blood. As if I'm nothing. Her voice was sharp, furious. Claire, they don't deserve you. They never did, but anger couldn't patch the wound. Not yet. The days that followed blurred together. At work, I smiled through events and decorated ballrooms for other people's parties, all while my heart ached. At home, I sat staring at the stack of gifts I'd never give. I replayed the scene in my head over and over, each time hoping the ending would change. It never did. But somewhere in that hollow silence, A whisper grew louder. If they didn't want me at their table, fine. I'd build a table so grand, so powerful, that one day they would beg for a seat, and I would decide, if they got one, because what they didn't know, what? I didn't even fully know yet, was that their betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of my empire. The week of Christmas was the coldest I can remember. Not just the weather, but the silence. A silence that pressed against my chest until I could hardly breathe. I came home from work one evening, dropped my keys on the counter, and looked around my tiny one-bedroom apartment. The string of dollar store lights I'd hung weeks ago flickered weakly. The gifts I had bought for my family sat unopened in the corner. I collapsed onto the couch, hugging my knees, whispering into the quiet. They banned me. My own family banned me. The words sounded unreal even as they left my mouth. On Christmas Eve, while carols played faintly from the radio, I sat alone with a microwaved dinner. I tried not to imagine my parents' dining room. The sparkling lights, the clinking glasses, Heather in her red dress, basking in praise. But my mind betrayed me. I pictured them laughing. I pictured Heather telling everyone I wasn't there because I didn't belong. And I broke. Tears poured down my face as I whispered, "Why am I never enough?" My phone buzzed. It was Dana, my best friend. "Claire, I'm serious. Come over. You shouldn't be alone." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I don't want to ruin your family's Christmas." "You wouldn't ruin it. They'd welcome you." Her voice was full of warmth, but it only made the ache sharper. "Thanks," I whispered, "but I need to sit with this." That night, I barely slept. My chest ached from crying, my body heavy with exhaustion. I woke up Christmas morning to silence. No phone calls, no texts. Not even a Merry Christmas from my parents. I was officially erased. I curled up in bed, staring at the ceiling, and thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong anywhere. It was the darkest thought I'd ever had. But then, like a flicker of light in the dark, I remembered something. Mr. Garcia, my old mentor at the hotel, once told me, "People will doubt you, Claire. But doubt can be fuel. Let it burn." The words echoed in my head, louder than my mother's mockery, sharper than Heather's laughter. Fuel. I sat up slowly, wiping my face. My heart still hurt, but something inside me hardened. If they wanted to erase me, I'd make myself unforgettable. I stood in my living room, looking at the stack of gifts I'd never deliver. My hands clenched into fists. "I won't stay broken," I whispered. The words shook at first, but then they steadied. I won't stay broken. It wasn't just a hope. It was a vow. And in that moment, alone in my tiny apartment with no one by my side, I began to plan the life that would one day bring them to their knees. The day after Christmas, the world was still. Most people were sleeping off food and laughter, but I woke up with something else burning in me: determination. I sat at my kitchen table, a notepad in front of me. Across the top, I wrote one word in big, bold letters, but not the kind of revenge they expected. Not screaming at their door, not begging for scraps of love. No, I wanted a life so big, so unshakable, that they would choke on their own cruelty. I circled the word and whispered, "This isn't about them anymore. This is about me." I'd been working at the hotel for years, always stuck at the bottom rung. I knew hospitality inside out, but never the business side. So I started studying every break at work. I devoured books on entrepreneurship, real estate, and leadership. When my coworkers laughed, saying, "My Claire, you'll never run anything bigger than a diner," I smiled tightly. Inside, I thought, keep laughing. One day, you'll be calling me boss. One evening, while shelving books at the library, I bumped into someone I hadn't seen in years, Mr. Garcia, my old manager. "Claire?" he asked, adjusting his glasses. "Hi," I said, a little embarrassed. "I'm still figuring things out." He gave me a long look, then said, "You've got fire in your eyes. What happened?" I hesitated, then whispered, They banned me from Christmas dinner. My own family said I wasn't good enough. Mr. Garcia sighed, then put a hand on my shoulder. Then prove them wrong. Use it. I can help you. From then on, we met twice a week in a quiet cafe. He taught me how to read financial reports, how to spot investment opportunities, and how to negotiate without blinking. You have something they don't, he said one night. What's that? I asked. Grit, he replied firmly. They were handed everything. You've survived without it. That makes you dangerous. The word made me smile. I worked double shifts, took on side jobs, and saved obsessively. While Heather posted pictures of designer bags on Instagram, I was clipping coupons, stacking every dollar into my freedom fund. It wasn't glamorous, but each deposit into my account felt like a small strike of power. I started networking quietly. I introduced myself to realtors, attended free business seminars, and built connections with people who didn't know or care about my family's opinion of me. One night, I stayed up late scrolling through listings. A small piece of land near the coast caught my eye. Run down, overlooked, but in my gut, I felt it. This is it, the first seed of something bigger. As I closed my laptop that night, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I was building something they'd never see coming. And when it was ready, they wouldn't just regret banning me. They'd beg for a place at my table. By spring, the air smelled different. Or maybe it was me. I wasn't the broken girl crying over cold leftovers anymore. I was focused, driven. And little by little, the universe started to respond. I remember the day clearly. I sat in a realtor's office, my hands trembling as I signed the papers. It wasn't a mansion, not yet. Just a small coastal plot with a crumbling shack. But when the realtor slid the keys across the desk, something inside me lit up. Congratulations, he said with a smile. You're officially a property owner, I whispered under my breath. I own this. For the first time, I felt the ground shift under my feet. I wasn't powerless anymore. I spent weekends on that land, fixing, cleaning, and learning. Dana came to help, bringing pizza and blasting music from her car. Claire, she laughed. Most people buy condos. You buy haunted shacks, I grinned, sweat dripping down my forehead. Most people aren't building empires, she raised an eyebrow. Empires, huh? I nodded. One brick at a time. At work, I walked differently. I spoke differently. When my manager barked orders at me like I was invisible, I didn't shrink anymore. In fact, one night after dealing with a particularly rude guest, I smiled and thought, you're complaining to someone who owns property. If only you knew. It was a quiet kind of revenge, silent, but satisfying. Then came the sting. Scrolling through social media one night, I saw Heather posing in front of a Tesla, my father standing proudly beside her. Her caption read, "Hard work pays off. Blessed." I nearly dropped my phone. Hard work? She'd never worked a day in her life. My chest tightened with anger, but instead of breaking, I whispered, "Enjoy it while it lasts, Heather." My win's coming. Months later, that little coastal shack, I sold it for double what I'd paid. When the funds hit my account, I sat frozen in shock. This was real. My first real win. I laughed until tears ran down my cheeks, whispering, they have no idea. No idea what's coming. I didn't stop there. I reinvested immediately. Another small property, then another. Each one better than the last. Every deal was like a quiet strike back at the people who thought I'd never amount to anything, and every success made me hungrier. But as my confidence grew, so did my resolve. I didn't just want small wins anymore. I wanted something so massive, so undeniable that when my family saw it, they wouldn't just regret banning me from Christmas. They'd realize I was the one they should have feared all along. The night before it all came together, I barely slept. My mind replayed the years of humiliation like a broken reel. Every insult, every dismissal. Every time my father or Heather looked me in the eye and told me I was nothing. Now, I finally had the power to flip the script. It started as a joke. A realtor once showed me a listing, a tiny private island off the Florida coast. Not many buyers for this one, he smirked. A bit too ambitious. But when I saw the untouched beaches, the turquoise water, the silence, you know what I felt? Destiny. That island became mine. It was more than land. It was the physical proof of every tear I shed, every night I worked until dawn, every time I refused to break. That year, just like clockwork. My family posted their holiday photos. Heather is in matching pajamas with my parents. Sparkling wine. Perfect decorations. No Claire. I could almost hear their laughter across the miles. But this time, instead of crying, I drafted invitations. Elegant, embossed, dripping with quiet wealth. Christmas on the island. At the bottom, I signed my name. Claire Robinson, host and owner. When the courier dropped the envelopes at my parents' house, I imagined the scene. Heather was tearing it open with her manicured nails. My mother is leaning over her shoulder. My father is adjusting his glasses, and then silence. The kind of silence you can feel in your bones. On Christmas Eve, the family yacht docked at my island. Yes, my island. I stood at the pier in a flowing white dress, the kind that whispered power without trying too hard. Dana stood beside me, grinning like the devil. Heather was the first to speak. "This is yours?" Her voice cracked. I smiled calm. Every palm tree. Every grain of sand. The tables were set on the beach, fairy lights strung between palm trees. Waitstaff, my staff, glided between tables carrying champagne. For the first time, my family wasn't the host. They weren't in control. They were my guests. I watched as my father sat stiff, his pride cracking under the weight of reality. My mother picked at her food, eyes darting. Heather kept glancing at me, her jaw clenched. It was intoxicating. Halfway through dinner, my father finally broke. He slammed his glass on the table. "Where did you get the money for this?" he demanded, voice trembling with both rage and disbelief. I leaned forward, smiling softly. "From the failure you laughed at. From the girl you banned from your table. From me." Heather's fork clattered onto her plate. My mother's face drained of color. For once, their silence wasn't my prison. It was my victory, but I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because the next morning, they'd discover the final twist. The one that would shatter every last shred of superiority they clung to. And when they did, they'd finally understand. The girl they cast aside had become the woman who owned everything they thought she'd never touch. The morning after Christmas, the island was quiet. The waves whispered against the shore. The fairy lights still swayed in the breeze. But the magic of last night had burned into something sharper. The silence was different now. Not lonely, but final. My family left early. They couldn't get off the island fast enough. Heather didn't say goodbye. She stormed toward the yacht, dragging her designer suitcase across the sand, her heels sinking into the earth like stubborn anchors. My mother followed behind her, stiff and pale as if every step away from me was an escape. But my father, he lingered. He paused on the dock, looking back at me with something I had never seen in his eyes before. Not anger. Not arrogance. Fear. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but nothing came out. Then he turned, boarded the yacht, and sailed away. And just like that, they were gone. News traveled fast. My island party became the story of the season among extended relatives and old family acquaintances. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years messaged me. "Claire, was that really your island?" Old classmates suddenly wanted to catch up, and Heather? She stopped posting her perfect life on Instagram for weeks. The silence was deafening. But here's what no one tells you about revenge. It tastes sweet in the moment, but afterward it lingers in strange ways. I sat on the beach the night after they left, staring at the water. Yes, I had won. I had flipped the script. I had shown them, but part of me ached. I had dreamed of my parents hugging me with pride for years. Of Heather finally respecting me. Instead, I got silence, distance, and fear. And I realized something. Revenge doesn't heal the wound. It just proves you can survive it. Dana joined me on the sand, kicking off her shoes. She sat beside me, sipping from a champagne glass we'd forgotten to pack up. "You did it," she whispered. "You finally did it," I nodded, but my smile was faint. "Why don't I feel happy?" I asked, voice shaking. Dana looked at me, steady. "Because you still wanted them to love you. But Claire, sometimes winning means letting go of the dream that they ever will." Her words hit like a knife. Painful, but true. In the weeks that followed, I didn't chase my family anymore. I didn't call. I didn't beg for their approval. Instead, I focused on building what was mine. More properties. More investments. More quiet power. Because I finally understood. My worth had never been in their acceptance. It had always been in my resilience. But deep down, I knew one more confrontation was coming. Not from Heather's jealousy, or my mother's judgment, or my father's silence. No, this one would be mine. My final decision about whether to close the door on them forever, or leave it open just a crack. And that decision would define not just my revenge, but my freedom. The new year dawned, and with it, a strange calm. For the first time in my life, I didn't wake up dreading the sound of my phone or the absence of an invitation. I didn't crave their approval anymore because I finally understood. The story of my life had never belonged to them. It belonged to me. Weeks after Christmas, an envelope arrived. My mother's handwriting. I held it for hours before opening it, my hands trembling. Inside, the words were as cold as winter. "Claire, you embarrassed this family. You've changed, and not for the better. Don't expect to be welcomed back until you find humility." I laughed. Actually laughed. For years, those words would have shattered me. But now? I whispered, "I don't need your welcome anymore." By spring, my empire had grown beyond the island. I bought a sprawling mansion overlooking the ocean, with tall glass windows and gardens that seemed to stretch forever. On the day I moved in, I stood in the doorway, keys in my hand, tears in my eyes. "Home," I whispered. Finally home. It wasn't just brick and stone. It was proof. Proof that their cruelty hadn't destroyed me. Proof that I had built something greater than they ever imagined. When Easter rolled around, Heather texted me for the first time in months. "Are you hosting again? Or should we make other plans?" The nerve of it. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to slam the door shut forever. To write back, "You don't deserve a seat at my table," but instead I typed, "I'll let you know. Because here's the truth. Forgiveness is not for them. It's for me, and I wasn't ready yet. Maybe one day. But not today. So what did I learn? That family doesn't define you. That rejection can be the fire that forges your strength. That sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't in making them pay. It's in building a life so radiant, so undeniable, that they can never again look at you and call you less. I was never their failure. I was always my own victory. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. It means more than you know. Tell me in the comments, would you ever let people like this back into your life, or would you walk away forever? I'd love to hear your thoughts.